Okay, trusts are a pretty wide-ranging subject, and solicitors and others devote their entire careers to making, breaking and understanding trusts. Perhaps that's why they're so blooming complicated, or at least can seem so blooming complicated. I'm just going to focus here on life insurance policy trusts and why they're so important, especially as I read this week that less than 30% of what we call single life policies, in other words, not joint policies, are actually in trust. And really, they should all be. First, some basics. What the heck is a trust? Well, a trust is a legal entity, a shell, a wrapper, which can own stuff: property, cash, investments, and insurance policies. In some ways, it's a bit like a company. It's controlled by the trustees, and they have to look after whatever the trust owns for the beneficiaries, the people who can have whatever's in the trust. You can wear one hat as a trustee and another as a beneficiary. But while it's in the trust, neither actually own it. The trust owns it. I can hear lawyers everywhere cringing at the simplicity of that, so I won't go into more detail. I'll move on quickly to look at the most important of the trusts and often the most neglected of those that we use, which is the life insurance policy trust. Now, as I said, if you have a policy which isn't in joint names, it should always be put in trust. If it's not, then if you die during the term of the insurance policy, or if it's a whole of life policy, when you die, the proceeds will be part of your estate, potentially liable to inheritance tax, and those you want to have the money will have to wait for probate, which at the moment can take months. If the policy is in trust, you on paper don't own it, and so the proceeds can be paid out within days and free of inheritance tax, which is important not least because the sum assured might be quite hefty and might make someone liable for inheritance tax who might not otherwise be rich enough. Now, the type of trust we usually use for this is a discretionary trust. The discretionary means that you tell the trustees all those whom you might want to have the money, and it usually says any spouse, child, grandchild. You can add anyone else you want, especially if you don't have any of those. And you note what you'd like to happen if you die tomorrow, or at least sooner rather than later. For instance, you might say everything should go to your partner, or equally between your children, or whatever. But if things have changed by the time you pop off, the trustees can vary this at their discretion. Clues in the name. You could arrange an absolute trust which can't be varied, but this comes with its own obvious risks, and we don't usually recommend this. If you have a critical illness policy, which pays out if you survive or if you die, there are special split trusts, as they're called, which can make sure you could get the critical illness benefit, or if you unfortunately die, the proceeds are held in the trust. So, is it a complicated or expensive thing to do? No. Pretty much all life insurance companies will provide the forms needed to put a policy in trust, with instructions on what to do and how to fill in the forms. Why are so few policies which should be in trust not in trust? Well, we could blame the internet for some of this, as if you take out a policy yourself via a comparison site or whatever, you probably won't be told it should have a trust around it. And we have to, as advisors, also shoulder a big chunk of the blame, I'd say, for not always either checking that an existing plan you've already taken out when we meet you is in trust, or making sure one that we recommend is. So I'll consider this as a reminder to us and to you too. Check and ask if you're not sure.